Miscellaneous minds, never explaining the minds. Devilish grin for my alias, aliens who respond. Peddling sin, thinking maybe when you get old you realize I'm not gonna fold or demise. I don't smoke crack, motherfucker, I sell it.
What is going on, everybody? This is the Miscellaneous Minds Podcast. I'm your co-host, Puma El Gato, the cat that gives you your hypocrisy back. And to my right over here is the man who's the narrow, the man that makes the fat stacks. Together we form the dynamic duo that won't die, deadly in the TS, brother, than spicier content than Eagles OnlyFans. Brother, what are we talking about this week?
Tonight we're going to talk about a little bit of the hypocrisy with an argument that's generally really only made towards men, but the honest truth is it could be made towards women too. But again, given the particular argument that it is, it never really gets pushed towards the women narrative, it only gets pushed towards the men, and a lot of the hypocrisy that goes with that. The argument that we're talking about here is the age gap that gets brought up a lot. It got brought up with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. It got brought up with Leonardo DiCaprio and various 26-year-old, 24-year-old women that he would date.
25 that he kicked him to the curb.
25-year-old women that he would date, so on and so forth. So the problem that we have with this argument is look, if you want to point that out, that's fine. Point it out. I think it's a stupid argument because in all of these cases, all of the people are adults, so it really shouldn't matter. But again, it seems that the arguments are only pushed out there when it's a man, an older man dating a younger woman, because there is plenty, and I mean plenty of examples where much older women are dating younger men. And we're going to talk about some of those examples. So I'll let you take the first example, my man.
So the first one that came to mind that I thought was hilarious, because given the context, if it was the other way around, people would be up in flames about it, was Prime Minister of France, Emmanuel Macron, and his wife. The difference between them is an age difference of about 46 years, I believe. Or so, it's definitely more than 30, I can tell you that. And the part that I thought was funny about this is originally when they met, Bridget, which is Macron's wife, actually used to be his school teacher. Mm-hmm. I was like, can you, imagine the outrage that if the opposite were to happen, if it was a younger lady dating her then teacher that she grew up with, and nobody says anything. They was like, oh, that's weird. It's like, no, nothing about, oh, it's disgusting, it's predatory. It's like, no, none of that. Fucking crickets.
Yeah, especially in that particular instance, because again, that seems like very much like a grooming scenario. Knew Macron as a small boy, as a small child, and now, in their adulthood, they're dating, they're married. So that definitely seems like a grooming narrative. But again, you guys hear that?
Tripping out. It was 24 years, but still, that's pretty fucking huge.
Yeah.
And for the argument of, because at least it gets brought up a lot with this, though. I was like, oh, when he graduated high school at 18, she wouldn't have been born for another 6 years. And I was like, dead ass. If we're using that same argument, Macron wouldn't be alive for another 24 years until after they got together.
So this woman was a full-grown 24-year-old before Macron was even on the planet, type of thing. And here's the thing: the reason that we have a problem with this is because it's a bullshit feminist narrative. Again, I have no problem if you want to point out that there's dudes out here that are way above the age, pursuing young women that are below the age of consent. That's fair. But again, a lot of these instances, like for example, I just saw an argument the other day. Apparently, Billie Eilish is dating a man. She's 19. I believe he's 30. And people are having a big old face. Oh, he's grooming her, blah, blah, blah. And here's the problem. You can't have it both ways. Either she's empowered or she needs to be protected. You can't say she's commanding her own sexuality, she's in charge, she's an empowered woman, blah, 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 and then also say, oh, but that guy's a predator. You can't have it both ways. And again, if you want to make that argument, fine. Make the fucking argument. The problem with that is that you got to make it for women as well. Again, in these instances where a Gabriel Union...
dating Dwayne Wade.
The many individuals that Cher dated. There's a couple more that I know that you wanted to bring up.
Oh yes, wasn't before we found out she was president? Wasn't PJ Washington and that Brittany Renner? Wasn't there a huge
Brittany Renner? She's the definition of a predator because she even put out the book on how to be a predator. She even put out a whole video basically stating these are the people you want to go get. These is what you want to use to try and get them, and they're most vulnerable at this stage. Predatory. But again, I see no women, not one of you, coming out and saying, oh, predator. I see plenty of men saying, hey, why aren't you guys calling this clear predator who put out a video saying, hey, this is how to be a predator, but nothing. Crickets.
So yeah, the examples I wanted to list was Jason Momoa marrying his Lisa Bonet, and the difference between them was 18 years. Dwayne Wade and Gabriel Union, that's 10 years. Nick Jonas and Priyanka Chopra, there was a 10-year difference between them. Nick Jonas is obviously the younger one. Cher dating Tom Cruise, Val Kilmer, and this new guy named Tim Mendes, which the difference between all of that is Tom Cruise was 16 years younger than Cher. Val Kilmer was 13, and this Tim Metzger guy was 24 years difference between them two. Never once did I ever hear about Cher being predatory with that same rhetoric of, oh, well, he's dating somebody younger than her, he's obviously predatory. It's like, none of that did I hear any of that.
Britney Spears and Sam Asghari, same thing. She's 12 years his senior, meaning, again, at a minimum, when he was 17, she was 29, which is a bigger age gap than the Billie Eilish and this individual thing. You know what the difference is? Again, they're adults. See, that's the problem, is that we as men, we don't make these arguments because they're stupid. And here's why. Because if Billie Eilish, as a grown woman, as a 19-year-old woman, as a 20-year-old woman, whatever she is, as long as she's an adult, what the fuck is the problem? And that's why we think it's a feminist narrative, and it needs to be fucking put down and needs to be called out for what it is. Because again, I've never seen one individual come out here and say about any of these couples, about any of these. But again, even when it was proven that Johnny Depp didn't do all the things that Amber Heard had accused him of, there were still people out here saying, oh, he's a predator, he's so much blank older than her, and blah, blah, blah. But again, all of these women, Cher have been vastly older than a lot of her individuals. Madonna did it a couple times as well. Again, Britney Spears, Lisa Bonet. Like, why are we only calling it out on one side? And that's the bullshit. Like, again, you want to make the argument? Fine, make the argument. But you got to call it out on both sides. That's why it's a bullshit feminist narrative. That type of shit needs to be called the fuck out. That type of shit needs to go out the window. Again, listen, I understand that a lot of times, even when you're 18 or 19-year-old, you're still mature and you may still be, not, mentally fully developed and all that, fine. But and if you want to call it out in the Billie Eilish scenario, that's fine too. But call it in every other instance where it's men that are much younger than women. And here's the thing: me and my man here, we have a little bit of personal experience in this particular. I don't know if you want to talk.
Yeah. So I was actually going to point out like the public perception of that, because like for instance, if I were to happen to be the vastly older one in the relationship, people would look at me like, ugh, gross. I legit had the complete opposite. For context, I'm actually dating somebody that is actually 16 years my senior. And the reaction whenever I tell anybody, oh, by the way, me and her are dating, and they know her, they know her age and they know my age, and I tell them, yeah, I'm dating this person, and they always like, oh, good for you. Like I'm doing some fucking act of charity. I was like, listen, man, the only act of charity that's being done in this situation is what she's doing to my schlong, all right? But that's besides the point. The point is, if you were younger dating an older woman, people would look at it as an act of charity, an act of service. It's not. It's a relationship I wanted to pursue. I didn't do anything beyond. I didn't think for a second I was doing a good deed. I just thought, hey, she has a nice ass, I'll definitely go after it. But no, none of it was for charity. This is a personally selfish deed on my end.
And think about that concept. Again, let's reverse the roles. Let's say he was the one that was 16 years her senior. People would be looking at this dude like he's a pervert. But again, because it's the reverse, because he's the younger one and she's 16 years his senior, it's completely okay. And that's what we need to call in the bullshit.
No, it's not just that. It's like, oh, it's okay. It's like, that's an act of charity.
Yeah.
Which is fucking mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody ever looks at a lot of these. Again, nobody looks at any of the multiple relationships that Madonna had or the multiple relationships that Cher had with younger individuals as, oh, they're a victim. And again, here's the thing. It goes right back to, I have no problem if you guys want to call it out, but you got to call it out on both sides. And that's why I think, especially, this is really on you ladies, because you guys are the ones boasting about all this shit. You guys are the ones that are making this fucking argument that, oh, these dudes are predators and they need to be called out. Why don't you call out the women too? Especially because, look, whenever I post about this type of stuff, about dudes are, if your dude's a scumbag and blah, 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 leave them, I get a lot of female praise, a lot of women agree, blah, blah, blah. But when I say, okay, but if your woman's a scumbag, I don't get the same praise. It's crickets. And that's why I think a lot of this stuff is it's bullshit, because it needs to be equal down the middle as far as the holding accountability of these people. Again, if you want to call it out, fine, call it out. I think it's a stupid argument, because as long as everyone is of adult age, it is what it is. They're grown men and women. But if you're going to say whatever, they're still, a child, okay, fine. Call it out, but at least call it out on both fucking sides. It's fucking bullshit that all these individuals, and again, look, I'm not even mad at it. Again, I think, if, using my man's example, if he's a 24-year-old dude and he's like, I choose to date a 40-year-old woman, whatever the fuck it may be, that's his decision. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna persecute for him, because if he's making a mistake, it's his mistake to make. I mean, the reverse of my scenario are same. If I was dating someone, that was, vastly older than me, whether people agree with it or not, it's my decision to make. And if I'm making that mistake, that's completely on me. With that being said, the thing that bothers me just the most is the hypocrisy, the bullshit on it. Again, call it out. Fine, call it out. But call it out on both fucking sides and stop the bullshit with it.
You know what's the odd part about that? So it was some throwaway conversation that me and my girl were having, where she out of curiosity asked like, what year were you born, by the way? And I was like, okay, I was born this year. And she said, I graduated high school that year. And I'm like, all right, what's your point? And I was like, don't you think that's creepy? And I'm like, I mean, you're making it creepy, but I mean, I don't really see an issue with it. I was like, is that really going to stop the relationship? And I was like, no. So I was like, then why would you point it out?
Yeah, see, I think that's the problem, that we're, you know, as men, we see, once you become an adult, we see you as having autonomy of yourself, meaning we see, like, as a man, when we go out and we make a decision, whether it's a good or bad one, at the end of the day, we look at it and we say, okay, if it was good, we're like, all right, I made a good decision. If it was a bad one, that's right, I fucked up. I mean, we don't put that decision on somebody else. Whereas, it seems with a lot of these fucking feminist talking points, it's always about pointing the finger somewhere else. Again, why are you guys saying, oh, you know, Billie Eilish's 30-year-old boyfriend is a pervert? Why don't you say, Billie Eilish has stupid decision-making skills? Like, if the argument is going to be, there's wrong being done here, why is it automatically wrong being done by the dude? Why isn't it wrong on Billie Eilish's part? Like, a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, he should know better. She's a grown woman. What if he's like, you know what, you're too young? And she's like, no, date me, nah, date me, nah, date me, nah, date me. Like, you guys don't know the whole background. And that's why I think it's stupid to make these fucking arguments, because it's not about equality. It's not about protecting those people. It's about a bullshit feminist narrative that again, you can't be, Billie Eilish can't be an empowered woman and, you know, she's taking control of her sexuality and all that other bullshit. And then at the same time, like, oh, but the dude that's with her while she's being empowered and taking control of her sexuality, that guy's a pervert. You can't have it both fucking ways.
It's fucking ironic. The very people that are about giving women more autonomy are ironically giving them less autonomy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Like, oh, it's like, well, once they turn 18, it was like they're not mature sexually or emotionally or whatever. Which I have two good examples for that. Now, and to that again, then I was like, all right, well, if 18's not when they should be dating, when should they? I was like, or at least a grace period. I was like, so 20 then. I was like, that's what you're proposing. I was like, well, yeah, I mean, they're still adults at 18, but, you know, grace period for dating. I was like, so the age of consent is 20 is what you're trying to say.
And see, and that's the problem with that is, like, for example, Leonardo DiCaprio was, I believe he's like 54 or something like that, and the girl he was dating was 24 or something like that. So then my next question is, okay, so what is this? Can he date a 35-year-old, someone that's 20 years younger than him? Can he date a 40-year-old, someone that's like 14 years younger than him? Like, where the fuck is the cutoff? It's just such an arbitrary argument. And here's the thing, I agree, there needs to be a fucking age. There needs to be a say where we say, okay, adult, not adult. But the problem is like, again, when you say, oh, well, he's, you know, 30 years her senior, whatever it may be. Okay, so do you guys feel more comfortable with 20 years her senior? 10 years her senior? Like, where the fuck is the argument? Like, again, even me personally saying it, like, when I think of somebody like who's you know, 10 years her senior, I think that's a vast age gap. And it's, I mean, mind you, 10 is not that much, but I still personally think that's a lot. When you start getting into 20 and 30, I'm like, okay, that's a whole life, you know.
Yeah.
You've developed a whole life. But with that being said, there needs to be a line. There needs to be a you know, you're an adult, you're not an adult. Not just for this argument, but for the argument of, like, you know, what are you legally allowed to do as far as voting? Like, a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, an 18-year-old is still not mature enough to be able to you know, have sex with a grown-up. Okay, fine. You guys want to make that argument? Does that mean they're not old enough to vote, thereby potentially changing history, changing the, you know, the way that our country moves? Are they not old enough to go to war? Are they not old enough to you know, at 21 drink? Like, what? Like, again, these are arbitrary lines that we've as a society have to decide on. But the fact that the bullshit only gets called on one side is what I have a problem with. Call it on both sides, or don't call it at all. Just let it go, because when people are fucking adults, they can do whatever the fuck they want.
The other thing I heard that, like, I thought was ridiculous as far as the argument of, like, well, it's like, well, they shouldn't have people be dating 18-year-olds, and I'm like, okay, I agree with you. It is a little bit sus, but why is it wrong? Like, it's legal. I mean, what's, like, that's all the parameters. Why is it wrong? And it was like, well, because women are not sexually mature at that age. I was like, okay, I've actually heard of two cases, two of which they're over 30, mind you. It was a coworker of mine, and she slept with somebody legit on the first night, and was legit constantly texting back. Like, if she wouldn't get like an answer, like within the first 5 minutes of her texting, she was like, did I do something wrong? I was like, that amount of clinginess, that amount of, like, I can tell she was emotionally neglected as a kid. Would you call that sexually mature? I personally wouldn't. But she's over 30, she can do whatever she wants. Another person legit sleeps with people on the same night, doesn't have people texting back, and she's like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? I wouldn't say that's sexually mature either. But she's allowed to have sex. Am I slut shaming? Absolutely not. But to say that, I was like, oh, they're not of sexual maturity to understand the gravitas of sex. I was like, I've seen plenty of people that have a blasé attitude towards sex, that they would prefer to have that over sharing their own intimate emotions. I don't think personally that's mature. But you're free to do what you want. But the fact that you say, oh, well, they don't really understand the gravitas of their situation. Like, most people would be very blasé about the gravitas of the situation. They still do it. Am I saying you're not allowed to? No. But they're free to make that decision.
Again, it all comes down to, look, you want to call it bullshit, fine, but call it on both sides. There needs to be an age that we all discern that after said age you are considered an adult, and after that you can do whatever with whoever the fuck you want. Listen, again, I'm not gonna say that I personally would, if I was 54, that I would date someone in their 20s. To me, that's weird. I don't think I'd have anything in common with them. I think it'd be fucking weird to date someone that I personally believe would be immature, especially because I'd be in my 50s. It's a weird concept. With that being said, look, listen, the person that I'm currently dating, we're 6 years apart. I'm 6 years her senior, and I'll be honest with you, she's very, she has an old soul, so to speak. So me and her identify with a lot of the same concepts. We see a lot of the same things. So I think, you can't put these arbitrary labels on people. Again, I don't know Billie Eilish. I don't know her on a personal level clearly, but she, at least the way she discusses things, when I see them, she discusses them in a very mature manner. So for, to be persecuting her and her dude because they're dating, again, to me, I couldn't possibly date someone, that... Yeah, but I know my man here who does date someone that's much older than them. So I'm not going to judge the situation because, again, as long as everybody's a grown fucking adult, let them be. Stop making this a goddamn thing about men. It has nothing to do with men. Madonna, Cher, Gabriel Union, Lisa Bonet. We could fucking go on. There's plenty of fucking older women that date much younger dudes. The problem is nobody calls it because as dudes we're seeing as, okay, well, you're grown, you can make your own decision. So can Billie Eilish. So can a lot of these people. The 25-year-olds that were dating fucking Leonardo DiCaprio, they're grown women. And it's not even like they just turned 18 or just turned 19 or just turned 20 or just turned 21 or just turned 22 or 20. You see what I'm saying? Like, you see how ridiculous? Like, these people have been adults for years. For years. They can make their own fucking decisions.
I think that's it for me.
I think that's going to be it for me. So thank you. Please comment, like, subscribe, hate, all that shit. DM me about the stupid things that you guys think that I said, about how you fucking disagree with me, all that beautiful stuff. And with that being said,
until next time, get rest and stay blessed. We'll see you in the next one.